Chapter 1 of Esthajnalcsillag, or Morningstar. I would like to tell you about a little girl named Morningstar. Yes, that is her real name, and she was named that by her father. At first, she really hated her name, but in time she realized just how special that name is. Her father made that name up the day she was born. The little girl was born at the end of the Second World War, and so many wars have come and gone since. Morningstar was born in the basement of a house in Hungary. No doctors, no nurses, just an old midwife who did the best she could under those circumstances. She was the second born to a family of a Lutheran minister and his wife. Morningstar had a brother 1.5 years older than she was. Her brother could not pronounce her name, so he called her Baby. He thought that was her real name because everyone that came to visit the family asked to see the baby. That led him to believe that his sister's name is Baby. Along with Morningstar, the Russians also came into Hungary. At first, everyone welcomed the temporary peacekeeping force, but it was soon evident that they did not intend to leave this beautiful country. They liked it so much that the Russians stayed for 45 years. Now, of course, the Hungarians were not as pleased about this idea as the Russians seemed to be, but like always, the Hungarian people's geniality and good sense of humor overcame the hardships as much as possible. So we became comrades and started mandatory education of the Russian language in the schools. Everyone studied. No one knew how to speak Russian. I think it must have been a psychological block. However, the teachers were only one lesson ahead of the class. I guess that explains the fact that foreign language is taught in Hungary, but very rarely learned to the point of being useful. By the way, the little girl's father named her Morningstar because when he looked into her eyes, they were as bright as a star in the sky that you see just before dawn. She was supposed to be named Dawn, but she arrived before the sun did. Oh well, even then she always seemed to get lost. And she does get lost to this very day. Therefore, as I said earlier, the Russians were here, and along with them came communism. We all know about communism, but living with this regime and reading about it are two different things. Problems were many. The countries had to rebuild after the war, and brigades formed to clear the ruins. Building material was hard to find, and to this day, you can still see the scars of war on many buildings. Food was even more scarce, if that was possible. The guests, the soldiers, took everything they could get their hands on and did not even bother to pay or even say thank you. Mm-hmm. The Russians claiming they have liberated Hungary took it for granted that we owe them room and board, along with our eternal thanks. And I mean eternal. Under the communistic way of running the country, many buildings were confiscated and large farms overtaken. All religious holdings became the property of the people, meaning the government by that. This meant the closing of religious schools, hospitals, nursing homes, orphanages, and all Catholic nunneries were shut down, along with Lutheran deaconess establishments. Now there was no one to care for the sick, the elderly, the orphans, and the needy. The government promised to do all this with little success, I must say. Religious training of any kind was forbidden. Non-party members were persecuted. No proper schooling for their children and no good jobs either. Of course, housing was scarce and not good to say the least. Under the communist theology, everyone is equal and we all share in the goods of the land. Now I ask you, was this ever true anywhere? So into this chaos, our little Morningstar was born. She had 3 strikes against her right from the beginning. 1, she was a Lutheran minister's daughter. And 2nd, she was female in a man's world. 3rd, she was born poor. Oh, I forgot the most important thing. She did not have relatives in high places. There were still occasional bombings toward the end of the war. I guess the soldiers did not want their ammunition to spoil or something. And her grandfather on her mother's side was also killed. Her other grandfather on her father's side was killed in the First World War. However, she was blessed by a loving, caring family, so that made up for the lot of have-nots. Now, this little girl inherited her mother's good looks and her father's intelligence. She had light brown hair and sparkling black eyes. She also had a temper to boot. Oh, did she ever have a very bad temper. Her hair was long and wavy. As she grew older, it was put into 2 fat braids with white ribbons on the ends of them tied into a big bow. Everyone loved Morningstar. She was a sweet and gentle child, obedient, punctual, and as always, trying to please everyone around her. The only thing she ever experienced in her younger years was acceptance and love. Morningstar's bright smile could light up even the darkest days, and the sparkle of her black eyes put the brightest star to shame. She was a plump, healthy little girl that remained with her all her life, not too much to her liking at that. End of chapter 1.